Straight talk from Israel. You're listening to Israel News Talk Radio.
Good morning, good, glorious, clear, stunning morning from Jerusalem, the holy city in the only Jewish country in the world. My name is Andrea Simantov, and you are listening to Pull Up a Chair on IsraelNewsTalkRadio.com. And let us get the show started by first saying oh my gosh, it's so late in the U.S., and Canada. I see you're listening in, and I don't know how you play it, but early morning in the UK, Germany, Australia's listening in Spain, Sweden, and good morning, the Netherlands. And of course, I forgot to say, Boker Tov, Eretz Israel. So here we are, Parshas Noach, the story of Noah and the flood this week. And I don't think there's a person walking this earth, even from religions that are not from the Abraham covenant, but I mean, everybody knows the story of Noah, the story of the flood. And this week, as if to remind us, the heavens opened up for merely a few moments, and we had rain in Israel. This might seem very strange to you listening in who experience rain throughout the year. Big rains, small rains, cleansing rains, annoying rains. Here, rain is a big deal, or as my mother would say in Yiddish, a ganze Gedilla. Okay, I didn't have to look up the parsha, the portion this week, because again, we can't forget about it. You know, I'm thinking about rain today when I posted the show on Facebook, on my Facebook page. I think I called it a boatload of bracha. Bracha is, of course, the Hebrew word for blessing, but I didn't want to keep it too secular, so all of us know the word bracha, a boatload of bracha, and that's what we're hoping the year ahead will provide to all of us. God knows we've been put on high alert this year, and whatever the messages are supposed to be, however we're supposed to come out of this COVID chapter, we're going to talk about some of the lessons to be learned. And indeed, does Parsha Noach give us an insight? This is Andrea Simantov in Jerusalem. I'll speak to you on the other side.
Always challenging the status quo. Hello, I'm Rod Bryant on Beyond the Matrix here at IsraelNewsTalkRadio.com. I want to encourage you to listen each week, every Wednesday at the same time, for an amazing show that will challenge you, inform you, and inspire. News, views, and wisdom for the nations here on IsraelNewsTalkRadio.com. Don't forget, Beyond the Matrix every week, Wednesday, here on IsraelNewsTalkRadio.com.
Psalm 23, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Did you know this psalm and many others were composed by a Jewish shepherd and musician who later became a king? Would you like to know some of the inner meanings of psalms to help you connect with God and strengthen your soul? An exciting and easy-to-read book is now available which will help you do just that. Software for the Soul, Psalms for Everyone, available on Kindle, Audible, and Amazon.com. Software for the Soul.
And we're back. Andrea Simantov, Pull Up a Chair on IsraelNewsTalkRadio.com. Why would you listen to any other station? It's just a question. Okay, so listen, the chat room is open, and I know a lot of people don't necessarily want to chit-chat with me, but do me a favor. If you're listening to this show live, I won't talk to you. I promise you. I say this to my husband quite often. I won't talk to you. All right, you're free. Drop me a note. Get into the chat room. Drop me a note. Tell me where you're listening in from. Love hearing it. Love knowing it. And if you have anything you'd like to discuss with me privately, off the air, a thought, tell me a little bit about your life. want a little bit clarification about something that we might discuss on the program, feel free to drop me a note at andrea@israelnewstalkradio.com. Okay, so as I mentioned, it rained this week, and 25 years in this country, I ran outside. I ran outside like a child. I mean, I'm a grandmother many times over. And like a kid, I ran outside and I looked up and I laughed, I scoffed, because indeed the weather app on my phone got it all wrong. Not a word of any kind of precipitation in the air. And all I thought was, gosh darn it, God, you got it right again. Again. We changed our prayers. We altered our tefillot. It gives a little bit of a shift after the High Holy Days, after Simchas Torah, after Shmini Atzeret. We change the prayers to pray for dew and rain as a blessing on the earth. And sure enough, God came through. Someone told me, not that it was a contest, God always wins, I always lose. But not that, someone said to me that actually the Sephardim, I really should have been better prepared for this show. The Sephardim have a little bit of a change in the prayer, and they pray for enough rain. And that's very interesting because we sort of in Israel, we live really mamish in the Middle East. And I got to tell you, it is hot here. I was just telling the producer during the break that I keep my fans on. The weather is changing. It's actually getting cool the mornings. And still, I put my fans on. I have these beautiful new ceiling fans in the morning because I'm so traumatized from the brutality of the summer's heat. But we pray for enough rain, the Sephardim, because the Sephardim North African Jewry actually comes from the Ladino Spanish, but because too much rain. Anybody listening in who has witnessed floods, the most terrible dikes and dams breaking, Katrina, the hurricane, Sandy, which destroyed my mother's home and neighborhood. Nobody could sit and say and look objectively and say, oh, but what blessings those rains were. People, they lost their homes, they lost their livelihoods, and indeed many lost their lives. So having enough is the blessing, because having too much can ruin so many of us in so many ways. Each week I have a meekly cut. I'm telling you, it's what's called a spoonerism. A weekly coaching meeting with other women coaches with whom I've grown very close in the last few years. And like everybody else, we talked about the paralysis. Put away my Siddur, my Jewish prayer book. There was enough loftiness for a moment. We talked about the paralysis that's kind of setting in after this, as many of us are still in lockdown. Israel is now inching its way out of what we call the second lockdown. I don't know what that really means, if it's a second lockdown, an ongoing quasi-lockdown. But I have a friend in Amsterdam. One of my co-coaches is in Amsterdam, and she told me they are now working their way toward a full, what they call deep and sharp lockdown. And there's kind of a paralysis setting in. So we were talking about, when we're talking to not just clients, we're talking to one another. We're talking to our partners. We're talking to our children. We're talking to our living parents. We're talking to the greengrocer. And we're saying, do we still have any controls? Are we just at the mercy? What controls do we still have? And I think to myself, this show, I think about the letters I have to get back to people, right back. My siblings who have asked me questions, about my mother's ongoing concerns. Do I owe them a letter? Or am I going to sit and say, oh, I'm too busy, I'm too depressed, I'm too much in a funk? We have to address things. We have checklists of demanding interactions, checklists of people to say thank you to. These are the controls we do have. Power and non-power in every moment. The things we're called upon to be. The acts we're called upon to perform. The challenges we have. The tasks. They're all out there. Somebody posted, I just love this, actually he's a Muslim friend, and he put up this really great posting. I guess we call them memes. I still don't know what the word means. I don't like it because meme kind of breaks down to me. We need a little less me, I think. But anyway, it was very cute, and it said, you are not your feelings. You just experience them. Anger, sadness, hate, depression, fear. This is the rain you walk in, but you don't become the rain. You know that rain will pass. You walk on. And you will remember the soft glow of the sun. That will come again. My friends, is an enormous mind-body connection. It's to everything we are. And this Parsha, Noah, is all about that. We can't say I am. I can say I am female. We're not going to get into the binary discussion. I am a mother. I was there on the day of the birth. I am a wife. I stood under the chuppah. I am a daughter. I am a neighbor. But what am I more than the amming? It is the feeling. So here I share with you. Here's where we get to the really intimate stuff. Are you ready? Erev, we say Erev Parshas Bereshis. Last week on Thursday afternoon, my husband presented me with drum rolls after my birthday, a dog. Yeah, I said it. It was just so fitting for the beginning of our new Torah readings before Bereshis and Noah. The responsibility of this dog is huge. She was so scared coming here. My heart just kind of broke for her. It sucked me in. And I was very much reminded of the sentiments. I felt a little guilty when I got my dog, because I'm one of these people who has said again and again, I quote the Rebbe Lubavitch, blessed memory, where he always said, it's not a good thing. Of course, I'm extrapolating because my mind is like a sieve. But I seem to remember, don't quote me on it, that the Rebbe Lubavitch was not anti-animal, the opposite. He celebrated animals. He says, go to the zoo, go to the aquarium, go on safari. I don't think he actually said go on safari because he didn't know my kids were in South Africa. But there was a suggestion that God's bounty, beauty, and celebratory creations are all around us to be seen, enjoyed, cherished, and considered. But he said, don't have a dog in the house because of the love. In Hebrew, the word for dog is kelev, kaf lamed vav. Breaks up into two words. The first letters, kaf lamed, is kol, all, and then you take the lamed and you switch it over and you make it lamed bet, lev, heart. It's all heart. Oh, it's so easy to hurt a dog. It's so easy to connect to a dog. And the problem is, emotions spent on animals can mirror those that we're supposed to hold for humans. Great thoughts for me with my new dog. Her name is Bailey, by the way, during this COVID era, when unfortunately human life in so many corners of society have been reduced to numbers. 47,000 dead in New York, 2,400. How many children? The numbers attending an unlawful wedding. Again, what has happened to us? And it makes me ask, is the fear and sadness of a dog worth more than the value of a human life? These are questions for us to consider. And in the end, I'm going to say it, there's only one moral answer to arrive at. The value of a human life supersedes the value of all. But I digress. Okay, so I got my dog, not just because I was lonely. I wasn't lonely. It was crazy. I suddenly, during this era, reaching out to my children in different ways and my grandchildren in different ways, I realized that I was just brimming with love. And I needed to interact more, to have real contact. And I tell you now, ask the mother of one child if she has enough love for that child. We already know that answer. And then I challenge you, ask the mother of 4 children or of 8 children if any of her children are being cheated in the love department. And in my world, I tell you that like a candle that lights one wick from the other, love doesn't diminish by spreading it out and re-illuminating. Love increases in intensity. Love indeed grows. Fabulous investment. Really good stuff. Which is going to bring us back to Noah. All right, when we get back, we're going to talk more about Noah. And again, was he righteous or not so? See you on the other side.
Shalom, everybody. Making a difference often takes just one moment and one person at a time. I am Orly Benny Davis, your show host on Israel News Talk Radios from Jerusalem with Love. You'll be hearing people talking about politics, religion, social issues, and making a better tomorrow. Join me, Orly Benny Davis, for God and Country. From Jerusalem with Love.
Wednesdays on Israel News Talk Radio.
And we're back. Andrea Simantov, pull up a chair on IsraelNewsTalkRadio.com. Very cute. I just got something in my news feed. I have so many things to talk about now. And, apparently Sudan is going to normalize relations with us. That wasn't what I was going to talk to you about. Just got this note. We're not going to spend a lot of time in it. I have more to research. It says dogs, it came out of Finland. All right, dogs detect coronavirus fast and reliably. Why not use them everywhere? This is Finnish researchers say that their canine sniffer experts can detect COVID-19 quickly and cheaply. But I think Jewish mothers can do it too. No, very interesting, very interesting. They're starting to do it in Helsinki airport. More on this breaking story. Okay, stop laughing, Andrea. Okay. Let's go back to my favorite subject, Noah. I love it because, again, in many ways it was, it's been relegated to those of us who are not familiar with our Bible or left it back in our church days when we used to get dragged, schlepped to church or to shul to listen to various sermons. And then we kind of, we've made jokes of it. We have a lot of cartoons. I remember seeing something very cute, a little cartoon of 2 dinosaurs, obviously a man and woman, they're like reading in bed, 2 dinosaurs are going, oh no, was that today? Get it? Was that today? They missed the boat. All right. So the animals came onto the boat on their own. That in and of itself, I mean, there's so many miracles, and like we could yawn and put up our arms and say, yeah, I know this story. But if we really invest ourselves and imagine we can smell the wood, smell the trees, smell the rain before it comes. I'm very sensitive to the smell of rain because I remember as a young child in summer camp, you could smell the rain before it came, very much the same way that in upstate New York and New England, you could smell the snow. The air would get very sweet before it began to come down. So imagine for a moment that we're there. There would have been no way for Noah and his family to collect animals from each corner of the world. They came. And when you think about the responsibility, my friends, this was no cruise. It was no carnival cruise. You think about like with the showgirls and the feathers on their head, Vegas on steroids. It was all on him. No wonder his neighbors thought him as crazy. He was a crazy guy. How was life on the ark? Oh, it must have been so cute. Oh, granted, the animals needed to be taken for walks. No, it must have been horrible. A nightmare, a walking nightmare. What did the family, Mishpachat Noach, what did the Noach family do all day? They took care of the animals. They were walking into walls. They lived to give. This is why rains, in their blessing, remind us that every opportunity, even opportunities that seem bleak and seem scary and seem hopeless, within those are opportunities of giving. Noah and his family lived on that ark for 40 days and 40 nights, and in the purest form, they gave and gave. They lived, they survived to nurture. The journey was not the stuff of storybooks and pastel drawings. Remember those, my first Bible books? You know, there were some commentaries that I came across that said that when Noah emerged from the ark, he was spitting blood and vomiting. He was at the end. He was near death. So it seems all good, right? He did great stuff. So what did he do wrong? He got off the ship, and the first thing he said, I think many of us can relate to this, I need a drink. I got to have a drink. So he planted a vineyard, and he got drunk. And there are a lot of commentaries about how this diminished him historically. History was not kind. It was said that in continuing his love story, which had begun on this frail and breaking apart ark, better he should have planted wheat to feed a world that was now emerging. Now the Torah doesn't say what's my proof of this? The Torah doesn't say, and Noach, a righteous and wholehearted man, was left. It says simply, and Noach was left. According to the Midrash, by doing nothing to persuade his contemporaries to mend their ways, Noach himself was guilty, actually, of a sin. He who doesn't act to make others better descends to a lower level himself. There's a lot for us to reflect upon. When Noach found out that he, and only he and his family, were the survivors of the flood, he realized that he was Noach only. And indeed, he kind of was filled with this sense of inadequacy because he had done nothing to save the others from a fate that befell them. I guess maybe we could challenge this and say, well, he was visible. He was building, the ark in the town center, in the middle of the town. They saw him. But was he talking about what he was doing, or was he ignoring them and just staying God-focused as he hammered away? Maybe he said to himself, but why should I even bother to them? They're not going to listen. So why should I talk to them? And as we've said before, over and over, and I will say it again and again, if we learn nothing from our time together on Pull Up a Chair, the task that lays before us is not that which guarantees the outcome we want. I mean, how would we have behaved if we would have heard him? Gee, this guy's really smart. Or we said, well, there goes that Looney Tune Noach again. But he still was not exempt from spreading the message, which he didn't do. So I beg of all of us listening in today, let's not pass on this story and relegate it just to a tale of children's tales. Hollywood cannot compete with the challenges that the Torah is setting in front of us with this story. Here. Oh, okay. So, but I don't want to leave us with a thought about how crummy he wasn't crummy. But he was great. Noach was righteous in his time. Could Noach have competed on the same scale? Our forefathers are Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. We do not toss Noach into the mist. But it doesn't mean that he wasn't great. It doesn't mean that he wasn't super. It doesn't mean that he wasn't chosen for this incredible task. He offered sacrifices. He said thank you. He took the moments and he said, my gosh, I'm alive. Look at this, a wreck of a ship. It behooves all of us to ponder this. The seas were deadly. It wasn't those calm waters. They knew at every moment, with the screaming and the wailing and the howling and the roaring of the animals and the tossing of the ship, they knew that they would die. But they didn't die. They persevered. He didn't say, screw this, I am nuts. Noah's faith was his oxygen, his anchor, and to him, in his way and in his role, the only thing that mattered. When he was called to do, he did say, Na'aseh v'nishma. You tell me, and I will listen. You know, I was listening to a lovely, lovely Torah lecture this week by Rebbetzin Tzipora Heller Gottlieb, and she said that when Noah reflected, he said, who am I to be today? Who am I called upon to be? And I thought to myself, this is the question we have to get up every day. First we say, Modeh ani lefanecha. Thank you, God. I thank you. Melechai v'kayom. You created everything. And then say, who am I called upon to be? We had a little bit of that this week. My husband, he got a message from one of these sites that he had been exposed to someone who was later diagnosed with COVID. And he said to me, I sat in the car. I wasn't there. I didn't go into the mall. I did not interact with this person. And he got in the car and he went to work. And 19 minutes later, his car pulled in and he came into the house and he called up the health ministry and he discussed with them and he got the okay to get out there in the world. He said to himself, who am I called upon to be today? Today, I'm called upon to be an example for my wife, for my children, for my neighborhood. And he said he had to practice what he preached. I like that. I like that again. Okay? Faith, the only thing that matters. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit, of course, in very lofty religious terms, because that's what we do here. We're going to talk a little bit about whether or not we're willing to lose friends, to compromise relationships. I'm sorry, I sounded a little weird there. I was like yawning between my words. To lose relationships, to compromise valuable connections based on something as shaky as politics. My name is Andrea Simonchov. I'll see you on the other side.
You're listening to Israel News Talk Radio.
This is Shai Bentako, and each week I'll be webcasting to you from Judea, origin of the word Jew, a people besieged and beleaguered in every generation. Nazi Germany is but a memory, but in its place the world invented the phantom Palestinians as this generation's internationally authorized Jew killers. Tune in for a different slant on life in Israel, Phantom Nation, every Monday.
Hi, I'm Rabbi David Aaron. The soul basics are the most profound, the most essential, and yet often the most neglected in our education. Join me for Soul Talk on Israel's News Talk Radio and discover the secrets to love, spiritual growth, and personal power.
How did a nice Jewish girl from Delaware end up living in Israel? Shalom, I'm Natalie Sapinski. Join me on my show, Returning Home. Meet different people who have moved to Israel. Hear their personal stories, their highs, their lows, and everything in between. Each week, we talk to experts on immigration and the process of moving to Israel. Listen to Returning Home every Thursday only on Israel News Talk Radio.
This is Andrea Simontel. Pull up a chair on IsraelNewsTalkRadio.com. I cannot believe it. I thought that this is like the second segment of the show, and I said, well, we're going to talk about this thing and that thing. Gee, it's our last segment. So the only thing we're going to talk about, and the irony is that we have so many overlaps in America and Israel, the rancor, the rage, the willingness to give up on friendships that were based on things that were so much realer. I think that's a word. It's a word because I made it up. Ladies and gentlemen, it's not too early for us to be thinking about what are we going to be like the morning after. And I'm talking as well to my friends in Israel. Those of us, oh, by the way, no, I have to say this, excuse me. This is like the benefit of ADD. Happy birthday, Bibi. Yesterday was the English birthday, the Gregorian birthday of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, 71 years young. So we wish him strength, health, good spirits, and indeed wisdom. Okay, so I just, there's just too many friends and family members that are just so angry, so frightened, so enraged, and so paralyzed by something as, not peripheral, I'm losing my English, ephemeral, as who the next leaders will be. Make up your mind. Do you know who's in charge? I do. The Gemara says in Brachos, just as the faces of people do not exactly resemble one another, so too their opinions do not exactly resemble one another. What's the comparison between faces and opinions? We get this from Rav Shlomo Eiger, who lived in the late 1700s to early and mid 1800s. He explained that we would never become exasperated or disturbed that someone's facial features are different than ours. We wouldn't condemn, complain, criticize someone for having different eye colors or hair. We understand and recognize that everyone is created differently, and our physical differences are part of what weaves the wonderful tapestry of our interconnected lives. Similarly, we should recognize that everyone's opinions are the results of their being created differently and raised differently. And just as someone is entitled to look different, so too, boys and girls, they're entitled to think differently and approach things differently without this infuriated disapproval and condemnation. If debating this election is not going to change minds, but only create more divide, why are we having these conversations? And if we do entertain these conversations, remember, the opinion of the person that you're dialoguing with is only one part of who they are. And if we cannot relate to one another politically, let's step back. Let's zoom out at our lens. Let's remember that ark landing gently on the top of Har Ararat, Mount Ararat, and remember how much we have to relate to the totality of who we are and what we share with one another. Okie doke. Noach, one of my favorite parshas. One can only view the entire Torah narrative of this parsha as being one that describes lost opportunities, roads not taken, chances missed. It begins with that terrible generation, that ugly generation of Noach itself. Noach does warn society of the looming disaster that's going to destroy them. and their world and civilization as they know it. Clearly, we see that he's not persuasive enough. Or perhaps the society is purposely and pervertedly oblivious to what's about to happen in their world. You know, a lot of times in history, and Jewish history certainly, and world history generally, you know, we have this 2020 hindsight. I'm a real genius. I was a genius growing up reading World Book. But, you know, we're witness to the consequences of not listening to the warnings around us, and indeed ignoring evident signs of danger. And I'm not just talking globally. I'm talking about in the world of our schools, in our streets, in our stores, in the marketplace, raising our children. And check out Social Dilemma, that documentary. There's signs of danger everywhere. No one likes to listen to prophets of gloom and doom. These, you know, oppositionists, we'll call them. They're icky. They ruin the fun in our lives. They unsettle me. Why do I want to listen about what could be if I don't pay attention to what my child is learning and listening to not just the food he eats, but to what the food he intones in his brain? We say that we want positive change to occur, but in our hearts, we're more than happy to not be bothered. Let things remain as it is. Indeed, hasn't COVID given us a good knock on the head? For those of us who are not just waiting for life to return to normal, but instead taking these days and thinking, who am I supposed to be today? Where's the lesson in this moment, in this day, in this year? Noah's generation, they missed this opportunity to save themselves. And thereby, they missed the opportunity to change forever world history. They judge Noah and his ark building project as, a bunch of oddballs, if not, an exercise in being Looney Tune. So even as the rains begin and the water begin to rise, they continue to laugh at him and his message in his endeavor. The Savior is usually, when he's not wanted, he's ignored in human events. He doesn't fill this preconceived notion of salvation. And even though he might be accurate and correct in his assessments, it's like, don't tell me, don't confuse me with the facts. He's reviled, he's ridiculed, he's laughed at. I don't have to give examples of this truism of human behavior. Any of us who have lived in Israel over the last 50, 40 years know they come out of the woodwork. We chase the golden scepters of peace around us. After the flood, again, it's Noah who's found wanting in this trade of missed opportunities. He's the embodiment of being so close but no cigar. Now, the reason the commentators always seem to treat him negatively is because he missed out on creating this world that would be unsullied, in a way, recreating Gan Eden, the Garden of Eden. It was never again offered to anyone else in our long chain of human civilization. By not accepting the offer and opening his eyes and not saying, "Oy vavoy, I need a drink," it dooms Noah to criticism and bad reviews in Jewish rabbinic scholarship. The Torah itself advances clearly the necessity to make correct decisions and choices in life. Unlike Noah, all of us today listening in at this moment, the rains are not coming in and flooding our windows. We have the time. We have the time to sit and think. The Torah tells us very clearly to choose life over death, good over evil, the eternal over the fleeting. Many times the refusal to make a choice when the correct one was obvious to us is not viewed in Judaism as being cautious or neutral. It's viewed as being a fatally wrong choice. An opportunity squandered is a sin. A lot of mottos about opportunity lost. I think Ben Franklin had a thing before to say about it. An opportunity squandered, according to Rabbi Beryl Wine, is a sin, and a sin of omission. Sins of omissions are many times worse and more dangerous than the sins of commission. To be in the game, to be participating, even be willing to get it wrong, as we've said in other weeks, to grab your gun and run out and save a life, even if the life is lost. Our job is not the guaranteed outcome. I think I'm very tired. The bracha is in the effort. Our lives are defined by the choices that we make and continue to make. Oftentimes, the necessity of making these choices is unavoidable. For outside circumstances crowd in upon us. Ask anybody with a loved one in the hospital. Hopefully, Hashem will grant us enough wisdom to take advantage of the opportunities presented to us and make wise choices in our personal and indeed our national lives. As the show ends, I want to talk a minute about the rainbow. God sets his bow in the heaven as a covenant between him and the earth. Jews do not celebrate when we see the rainbow. Chazal, the sages, tell us that the degree of the flood came upon the world as a result of robbery, oppression, which were rooted in jealousy and hatred. The rainbow is comprised of 7 colors, each different from the other, and yet it appears harmonious. We learn that even though man's thoughts and characters are different, it's possible for human beings to achieve peace and brotherhood. The contrast of different colors in the bow produce splendid beauty. Andrea Simintov, Shabbat Shalom.
Israel News Talk Radio's chat room. Just click the orange button at the top of the IsraelNewsTalkRadio.home page, log in as yourself or an anonymous guest, and join in on the fun. You'll meet other listeners from all over the world who listen to Israel News Talk Radio, and you can make new friends. Israel News Talk Radio's chat room. It's the closest you can get to being in the studio with us.
We love listening to Israel News Talk Radio.
Where can you get the inside news on Israel? At Israel News Talk Radio, we're dedicated to sharing Israel's inside story with the world by providing our listeners with news on Israeli politics, current affairs, and Israeli Jewish culture. The Israel News Talk Radio homepage also provides you, the listener, with useful information at your fingertips, with scrolling news headlines, weather, currency exchange, Shabbat candlelighting times, and so much more. Our radio programming is always accessible and on demand. We operate absolutely free of charge for everyone, everywhere. If you love what we do, partner with us now by becoming an Israel News Talk Radio supporter. With your support, you'll be inscribed on our Israel News Talk Radio Wall of Fame. There's nothing like us in the world. Be part of something great. Israel News Talk Radio. Straight talk from Israel.
If you love Israel News Talk Radio, then you'll love our Facebook page. We keep you up to date on what's happening in Israel, plus little surprise treasures that we don't share on the radio. Go now to follow us on Facebook. Just look for the Israel News Talk Radio Facebook page, and don't forget to subscribe and follow us by clicking on the like button. We post great stuff there that you'll want to share. Israel News Talk Radio on Facebook and Israel News Radio on Twitter.
News, opinion, and more. You're listening to Israel News Talk Radio.